I played a lot of sports growing up, and, as with all kids, I probably treated my body as somewhat expendable and would generally have no issues about making the diving play to try to get the ball and putting yourself out there. And, sometimes there'd be bumps and bruises and injuries along the ways. And I didn't realize the resource I had at the time in having family members that could put me back together. And so my life experience was that if
Dad can fix it.
Dad can fix it.
Dad can fix it.
And at home, it was very convenient.
Very convenient.
If I took a fall and I had a ripper of a headache the next day, and sometimes that wouldn't go away, or I injured my back and I had what I now know is facet-mediated pain, so pain coming from the back of my spine, I would just ask for help and it would be taken away like it was, like an error on a chalkboard. We just rub that out and
Boy,
we're
that's
good to go.
dangerous.
It sure is. And it wasn't until later in life, even in high school, that I had teammates that would have similar injuries and didn't have those resources, and I would see them be out for a month or two, and then it only takes one or two of those rounds where you've lost the fitness and you can't catch up, and then that person's now really not able to contribute to the team the same way. And so I got really fascinated with pain because at the time we were still dealing with some of the political issues in the Maine, the medical associations not feeling that chiropractors were legitimate, and that all was some political issues related to the attempted monopolization of healthcare. And so, I was told even as a kid that what my dad and my grandfather did wasn't real medicine, and that they were quacks, and
yet your experience comparing you and your teammates.
Yeah, my real world experience about what I would go through, like, you can share with me that my reality isn't real, but I would strongly disagree with you, and I'm a bit of a fighter, and so that created a deep sense of recognition that we had something that was special, that was unique, and that was worth pursuing. And so in my graduate studies, I worked a lot in the VA hospital system, working with chronic pain. I remember doing rotations in the Monroe Community Hospital outside of Buffalo, and we would be working with people that had like hemivertebra. They were born with congenital malformations and things where the spine was structurally unstable, very complicated cases, fusions, having to work above and below those areas. And I remember just recognizing that even within the chiropractic system, while we were getting really good outcomes, a lot of the times the pain would persist, and I always was in a position where I was able to believe my patients. I'm here. These patients have no interest to lie to me. I'm not going to put them on disability. I'm not going to give them an opioid. I'm not going to do anything that would motivate them to be disingenuous. They're here. They're spending their time. They're spending their resources. They're trying to get help. And so if a patient was describing a pain pattern or a pain symptom that didn't match up to what I was taught in school, maybe instead of being in a position where I would then have to evaluate if this patient was being untruthful, I was always able to start from a place of, I believe you. This doesn't quite match the models that we're looking at. We need to go further and find out what's happening.
Figure out why. Get to the root of it.
And so at the same time, I was pursuing a second degree in acupuncture and Oriental medicine. And a lot of the times that would provide answers and using a different system of analysis that made sense. And we were able to get results where a single specialty didn't, as with all things, if you're a hammer, everything's a nail. Right? Until you're not.
Yes.
And so
if it looks like a horse, don't look for a zebra.
Exactly. Yeah.
But you're like, there are occasional zebras.
100%.
Yeah.
And there's the occasional zebra up front and then a horse in the back. Yeah. and it can go every which way. And so that led me down a rabbit hole of really focusing on pain and function, and also recognizing that even within those specialties, patients we would have greater outcomes when we would synergize together and working with more specialties that would help address the different elements of what would take a patient from chronic pain to full function. And so our initial office in Cape Elizabeth was opened in 2012, and we got the biggest space that we thought we could possibly need to occupy in 5 years. And in 2, we were running out of room.
Man.
And
It's a good
so
problem to have.
Good problems to have.
Very good problem.
And so in 2014, we had purchased a parcel near about a mile and a half down the road, and we built a 7,000 square foot facility that we moved into in 2017. And at that time, we added physical therapy. And because we recognized that the need to progress these patients just from the progression of acute pain to then loading and adding functionality to follow that, was just good standard of practice.
And different. I mean, I'm married to a physical therapist, and you'll see, kind of one or the other, and not so much this integration. But so much of what you do is outside of kind of the traditional box, and we'll get to talking about certainly government and insurance and all of that. But that kind of marriage of multimodal.
Yep. Multi-specialty care.